All right, we're live. Welcome to Dive into Worldbuilding, and this is the day when we sneak in one more dive into worldbuilding before Thanksgiving. And today we're talking about birthdays, but I think we should keep it open to talking about things like coming of age and other kinds of age-related special events. So birthdays, because we have a very particular idea of what to do on birthdays in the U.S. And there's a song which we will not sing. And the song is really old and is always sung badly, or almost always sung badly. And there are variants on it. Like lately, there's a cha-cha-cha variant on the song.
Yeah, that's thinking
I'm always like, well, this is, I mean, like, what do you do? This is the song wasn't always a sort of a belong to the folk song, but now it does. And so when people introduce a cha-cha-cha variant, you kind of go, okay. But anyway.
Well, there have always been variants, though.
Yes, there have always been variants. And and there's some people who make an enormous deal out of birthdays, and that's like big events in a child's life. And there are other people who don't make a big deal of birthdays. And in fact, there are particular religious groups where it is not a good thing to celebrate somebody's birthday, or, you know, so there's a lot of variation, I guess you could say. But one thing that I feel very strongly is that if you're working in a secondary world, you should probably not have the same kind of birthday traditions there as you have in current US of A. So hopefully we can talk about the way different cultures in the world celebrate birthdays differently, and also how one might celebrate birthdays in a secondary world.
Cool. Yes. I had it bedside, but I think I put it away. I was about to pull out the Australian Book of Birthday Cakes.
Oh wow!
Which I may pause later to look for it. So there's a book of birthday cake ideas that were put out by the Australian Women's Daily, I think, or something like that magazine, and it's a childhood nostalgia thing from the early 80s for a whole generation of Australians. And the interesting thing about this book of cake recipes is that, unlike most of the American cake recipe books we have, they're not very glossy. They look very attainable. Dare I say, slightly messy, so that, you know, your mom could make a birthday cake that looked exactly like the book, as opposed to, oh, Mom, thanks for trying, but it doesn't look like. So, yeah, well, very nicely done cultural tradition, and there are also things in there that are expected that I didn't know, which created some hilarity, because I was sitting there in Australia and people are expecting that all English language peoples have the same birthday tradition, but we don't.
Yeah. Can you remember what elements struck you as unusual?
Obligatory fairy bread. Fairy bread is when you take a piece of sliced white bread, spread it with butter, and then add rainbow sprinkles on it.
Oh, good Lord.
And then probably like cut it into triangles. And I'm utterly appalled by this because I don't really like rainbow sprinkles. But it is apparently not a party without that. Wow. They also play a game called Pass the Parcel, which makes sense, and I kind of thought about bringing it to my children, which is basically musical chairs, but with a gift wrap package.
And it has layers and layers of wrap, right?
Layers and layers and layers and layers of wrap, and lots of tape, and so, you know, and then, so they used to play it with a record player. Yeah, I'm told, and, you know, Mom would very carefully make sure that every child got a chance, unless they weren't one of the nice moms. But apparently you must have Pass the Parcel and fairy bread for it to be a proper Australian birthday. I've also heard about various birthday songs that I didn't actually get exposed to. They don't sing the same birthday song that we do, and apparently that's also true in the UK. They have a different birthday song. And
Well, that's
and then, of
interesting.
course, there's the Spanish traditional birthday dirge, which I am not a fan of, but it does exist and probably should be noted on a thing about world building and genre.
Well, you know what's funny
All right,
about
I'm done
the
with my
American
monologue.
birthday song, which you and Brad are calling the dirge, is that
No. I don't. By the dirge, I actually mean a Spanish thing, which is like the what do they call
okay.
it?
We call it the birthday dirge. And
Yeah.
my friend says what we call it. It's to the tune of the Volga boat song.
Yeah. That's the thing. That's not the.
Now you've
that's not
reached
the
the
same
age
as what
you
Brian
are.
was
Your
talking about.
demise
That's what I was
cannot
talking
be
about.
far.
Okay, yeah,
That
there
one.
you can
Yeah.
find it on YouTube.
Yeah.
If I click it, it's gonna start auto playing, so I won't do that.
It's a little it's a little problematic, but yeah. No. I have heard the birthday. Juliet, is it actually traditional to sing the birthday song deliberately badly as opposed to accidentally badly?
I think it's always accidentally badly.
Well, and I think it's just because, like, if you're just singing around, like, what are the chances you have a trained singer in the family?
The reason I ask,
singers.
the reason I ask is because I've participated in recent years with singing the birthday song with people who have beautiful voices, and they like deliberately tone it down, and so it does become a bit of a dirge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So apparently, like caterwauling is obligatory. I don't know.
I'm part of the San Jose Symphonic Choir, and when we sing the birthday song, we add harmony, and it sounds gorgeous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like on purpose. We do.
My dad always adds harmony, but he does that when the birthday song is being sung on one key. Oh. So that doesn't always happen. I mean, I think what's funny is, okay, so this is sort of a random thing. I have this desire to hear the birthday song sung well. And so when I'm at a birthday party and people take a breath to start singing the birthday song, I start singing the first note slightly early to try to see if I can get other people to hit on my note.
Does that work?
Because the reason why the birthday song gets sung so badly half the time is because nobody decides on what note we are going to sing it.
Oh yeah.
So if you actually pop in a split second early and hit and give everybody a note, they'll kind of gravitate to it. And then it resolves a little bit more into a song and a little bit less into a complete cacophony of who knows what. But I mean, it is funny. We're all ready to sing it, but nobody wants to decide what note to sing it on. And of course, then there's when you sing it. Like, it's like, well, is it a birthday if you haven't sung it, first of all? Do you sing it as the person's bringing the cake in?
Or before you blow out the candles?
Bring the cake in and then sing it. But the blowing out of the candles, which is this ceremony, comes at the end of the song.
Yes. You cannot blow out the candles until the song has been sung.
Right.
I think we can agree on that part.
So, yeah. So my understanding, it's interesting that we call this one birthdays, and what was the other part of it? Coming of age. So in European history, birthdays are kind of relatively recent. At least in Catholic countries, it was all about your saint's day. Yes. And when you were baptized, which was not usually, I think, on the day you were born. I'm not Catholic, so
that'd be after. It'd be
like a day or a week after or something. And then it was your saint's day that was important, which was, I guess, associated with the time of your birth. But I think it's the time when the saint died, maybe. Anyway,
I think it's the saint you were named for, actually.
But wouldn't you name?
It's the day commemorated on the Catholic liturgical calendar for the particular saint you were named for. And so when I was in Tahiti, which is very strongly French and Catholic, people came up to me and wished me Happy Saint's Day on some St. Catherine's Day. And I think there are a couple on the calendar, so they were all a bit perturbed that I didn't know which St. Catherine, and I tried to tell them I wasn't named for a Catherine, except that was less convincing than I It could be because all of my siblings are named for like Irish Catholic names, so Catherine and Robert and Brian. So it's difficult to tell people no, it's not a Catholic name. Anyway,
so this was in Tahiti, you said?
this was in Tahiti.
Mm-hmm.
This was French people in Tahiti coming up to me saying, you know, I don't remember the exact phrasing in French anymore, but it was they were all wishing me a happy Saints Day, and I just looked at them bewildered for the first half of the day until I finally understood what was going on.
That's really interesting.
So in terms of I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot, but apparently this is what happens when I don't talk for 3 weeks.
That's okay.
So in terms of other sorts of birth accounting, traditionally before Westernization, Japanese birthdays all started on January 1st, and everybody leapt forward a year. And when I told other people about this, my horsey friend said, "Oh, like thoroughbreds." So I guess so.
Wait, what? No.
All horses age a year on some specified day. It might be January 1st. I don't know. I'm not that horsey.
Oh, that's a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So,
okay. Wow.
But in pre-modern Japan,
yeah,
everybody aged forward a year on January 1st, or whatever the new year was back then. It was not January 1st pre-modern times, but on the first day of the first month, everybody would age a year, as opposed to being the 365 days after you'd popped out.
Which makes sense. For example, I'm gonna sorry. May I jump in?
Yes, please.
Adults Day, which is January the 15th, is for everybody who has turned 20 in the last year.
Yes.
But it probably made more sense when they had just turned 20 like 14 days ago.
Possibly. I don't know. I mean, there's nobody alive who can tell us what it felt like then, and I have not seen any accounts written of the period. The other thing that's interesting is that in some cultures, you were born at you were officially 1 year old when you emerged, because they counted your gestational time as time of aging. So you started off as 1. Yeah, as opposed to we start off at age 0.
Yeah. And so in fact, back in those times, you could be 2 days old and be 2.
Yes.
Because if you were born on December 31st, you'd be 1. And then on January the 1st, you would turn 2.
Yes, I do believe that's true. I'm not clear, but very definitely you could be very, very young and be
2.
What was the function of this system?
Sorry?
What was the function of having a system like that?
What's the function of having a system where we count how many days it's been since you were born?
Yeah,
well, where
I'm
everybody ages simultaneously on the first day of the year.
I think it would cut down on timekeeping. Like if you don't have access to accurate calendars, then it's a little easier to just do everybody all at once.
Well, I'm not sure that things have to be organized, but at the same time, there are some aspects of it that would be convenient, because you wouldn't have to, you know, people would be the same age all year.
The other thing,
like for
sorry, Kat.
Sorry, I'm stepping over Shay here, but the other thing that becomes important here is that in a society where age is very, very important, and relative age and rank is important. I think that I am speculating entirely here. I think that having a flattened system allows for a larger cohort rather than having a much more granular thing.
That's interesting, yeah.
At the point that you start saying, well, I was born in this part of the year and you were born in that part of the year, I think that who's to say that we stop it, you know, at the day of the month as opposed to the seconds and the emergence. And I think that the protocol would just get complicated. But this is just me speculating and thinking about the world building of it.
The idea of cohorts is really interesting because we do cohorts as well, but usually by year in school.
Yes.
And so,
yeah.
But so age cohorts makes a lot of sense. I realize you're speculating, but I think those are very interesting thoughts. Now, Che, what were you going to say, hun?
Mine was, I was thinking also it could also ease census records and taxes. If everybody is just like, boom, everybody turns 18, now you start paying your tax or whatever, system you want to apply. But it would also, like, the census would also be easier because it could be like, how old did you turn this year? And everybody has the same answer.
Well, they don't have the same answer, but they.
Well, yeah, no, I know, but
But you can track it more regularly by asking after January 1st, I suppose.
Yeah.
The other thing that is relevant here is that the Japanese, unlike everybody else in Asia, does the Chinese Zodiac year, and we flip it on January 1st rather than on Lunar New Year.
Yes.
Oh.
So it also means that everybody is the same sign for that calendar year. For us. I don't know how much it would have mattered at a time when the calendar and the Lunar New Year were more aligned. But I also know that there was a Japanese calendar that now we're far afield and going off into calendars, but they had a base 10 calendar going on for a while, as opposed to a base 7 calendar, which is what we're used to.
Oh, yeah.
So instead of having words like fortnight, we have words like the 20th day.
Yeah.
Going on. So
I noticed that about Japanese counting, that 20s are important.
So we have the 10s and the 20s are counted. And there was something about market days and all of that going on with that. And so I think part of it is that now that we've regularized our system and secularized our system, we forget in the Protestant English-speaking West, I guess is the best term I can use for that.
Yeah.
That holidays and rest days and things used to be very much around your naming days and other parts of the calendar. And so the significance of birthdays changes when you think about the world that way.
Mm-hmm.
And when you time things that way.
So I was we were in France this past summer for my daughter's birthday, and she got a very sweet birthday cake and a song, but it was a little different. Yeah, I mean, so what's interesting is you've got these subtle differences. Where's the crackling coming from?
Oh, sorry, that's me.
So you've got these subtle differences in different areas, but a lot of it has become regularized. So like in a secondary world, what are you going to do for birthdays? And you should probably think about why, right?
Right. Well, I mean,
I'm trying to think of a speculative fiction book that had a birthday in it, and I can't.
There's the Fellowship of the Ring, where it starts everything.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Bilbo's 111st birthday, when you learn a lot about hobbits and birthdays and magic rings and things like that.
Same birthday as Frodo.
Yes.
That was a very, but it was, in a lot of ways, it was sort of like a very typically British birthday.
Yes.
Extremely.
I think, so, like, I mean, aside from it being a big party and having magical fireworks, but, yeah, to do like...
Well, there's a Hobbit tradition of giving gifts on your birthday, which is different from the English.
That's true, too.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point, too, is like, do you give gifts or do you receive gifts?
Yep.
Or neither one. I have a friend who's a scholar on various pagan traditions, and he says that the candles on the birthday cake come from the Greek tradition of honoring your genius, or genius, the part of you that is divine, and the flames represent that. So,
ooh, nifty.
At least that's what he's turned up in his scholarship. I don't know how controversial that viewpoint is or accepted that is. But it's interesting, right? I mean, you can think about, if you're world building, you can think about what birthday traditions might symbolize various things. And especially if you're like Tolkien and put it in the beginning, you could have the birthday be a microcosm of foreshadowing and world building and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, like, if a baby is born and one of the presents that's given to by the oldest female relative is a particular kind of dagger, that says a lot about the culture right there, right?
Oh my God, I just realized I have to change something very badly in a novella.
I'm suddenly going, oh wait, I have I've already been thinking about age counting and disparate time markers for different cultures, because I have a couple planetary cultures and I have some space cultures and some ship cultures, and how you would account for the passage of time is different.
Yeah. If you're born in space, what's your birthday, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it might be ship's time, and then there's all these relativity questions.
Exactly.
I think some of that has been dealt with in science fiction, but not so much with birthday parties.
Well, I don't want to get off onto timekeeping, but in the Werner Vinge books, isn't it Werner Vinge? But they talk about basically they've defined a second as an X period of time, and then they and then they
kiloseconds and megaseconds,
exponential numbers of seconds.
Yeah, everything is done in seconds, which was obvious to him, and not necessarily obvious to other people. So if you get the paperback of A Fire Upon the Deep, it's not in the original hardcover release, but in the paperback, there's a chart that explains, how many minutes are, a kilosecond and a megasecond and things like that. And it's got a little exponential chart so that the reader who lives on Earth and uses hours and weeks and days can figure it out.
It would make sense in space to use the body clock, which is more like 25 hours, I believe.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
That's a good point. I've never seen anyone do that.
24 and a bit, but the problem is that body clocks are slightly personal.
Yeah, slightly.
Well, I mean, some people vary greatly, but I don't think there's even within. I think it fluctuates by at least an hour or two either way for a lot of people. We just regularize according to sunlight.
Now that you bring it up, it would be interesting to have a protagonist from Earth, say, on a spaceship run by Martians using a Martian day as their ship clock, right? Of like 24 hours and 30 odd minutes. And
then he'd be trying to figure out when his birthday was.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I actually, for that very purpose, I have my character is shipborne and very, very conscious of timekeeping on Earth, and talks about things as having taken X many orbits, and it's very clear that she's regularizing her timekeeping to earthly astronomical things. But I think that I had originally, and this is still a work in progress, so it's all up to revision. The ship's clock is based on repair cycles.
Oh, that's interesting.
And what kind of cycle?
Repair?
Oh, repair cycles. That makes sense.
I like that.
But there's also
when do birthdays start? Like,
it gets
do you start counting from when you're born? Maybe you don't celebrate until the kid survives their first 5 years.
Yeah,
it's true.
It gets more complicated when you start adding in relativistic speeds and relativistic aging. right? Because cultures, it's going really, really fast. It comes back to wherever they started.
Well, but you know what? I haven't seen too many people make problems with relevant. I mean,
oh, it came up in the Dan Simmons Hyperion series.
Well, yeah. I mean, but people usually just accept that the person's older because they've been in relativistic space. It's not like that they argue, well, you haven't been gone that long.
You know, maybe you get multiple birthdays. Like maybe you get 3 a year. Like this is your ship birthday, your planet birthday, and your other planet birthday.
Sure. I know people who celebrate their birthday on the Western calendar and on the Jewish calendar. Yes. Or they pick one.
Yeah.
Well, I also, now that Facebook has made us all interact more actively and sort of in real time, I and many of my other friends start getting birthday greetings as our birthday date hits Australian midnight.
Yeah.
And then all the way to the end of the planetary day. So it makes sort of like 48 hours of birthday time.
And you just reminded me of the opening of Ringworld, which starts with Louis Wu's 200th birthday, and he's teleporting around the world to extend it for that very reason.
Nice.
So he starts at the international date line and celebrates it, you know, going around.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I get around everything by celebrating birth month.
Well, so if you don't mind, I will tell you about a couple of things I did with birthdays in my Varan world, specifically for the nobility, because I haven't actually explored them at all with the other castes but the nobility are super, super inbred and always unhealthy, and so they have birthdays are a big deal because you made it. So nobody says happy birthday; they say congratulations. Right? Well, like, what is the greeting for your birthday? Could be a question that people ask. Is it happy? In Byron, it's not happy. It's congratulations, you made it. In the nobility, right? So, but then I started thinking about particular birthdays, right? And so the novel has a birthday, which is a coming of age birthday for a boy. It's the 17th birthday, and it's called The Age of Choice. Because you're able to drink alcohol at that age, and you're able to participate in politics at that age as a boy. As a girl, you're able to be married at that age. So it's not age of choice for girls because the boys are the ones doing the choosing. But in fact, the boys don't get to get married at age 17. They have to have political power in order to get married, which means they get married much, much later. Let's not talk about marriage in Varan because it's messed up. It would take too long. But the 17th birthday is a big deal, and they don't have a cake. And they don't have a cake. They don't do that. But they have a big party, and they bring everybody in from the family to show you that you made it, that you're there, and also to introduce you to all the important people that you're going to need to interact with in the next year of your life. So it's sort of a congratulations thing. It's sort of an introduction thing. And there's also another story that I wrote that has a kid celebrating his 6th birthday, and it's called a confirmation birthday. And confirmation birthdays don't have to happen at any particular time. They happen on the next birthday after the doctors have decided you're going to survive. And not just that you're going to survive, but you're going to be not too disabled to participate in the social life of the nobility in this city. And so, in fact, you get sort of a certification letter from a doctor that you get stamped. And again, there's this sort of introduction aspect to it where it's like, here this child is being introduced into the noble society of the city. And so everybody should know who this person is because now they're a full-fledged person in the society. And this was stuff that kind of happened because of the story that I was writing and what was happening. But it also grew out of a lot of sort of base level parameters that I had set for the nobility and how their health worked and how their brains worked and how they conceptualized what makes personhood in their society. So anyway, so I just thought I'd throw that in there as a sort of an example of something that you can do. And also to say a lot of the things that we think through when we are putting together a secondary world are going to have influence on things like birthdays in ways that we may not anticipate until we get down to the nitty-gritty of thinking through how it might work.
Why did you choose 18 instead of 13?
I chose 17 because
17, sorry.
I chose 17 because they have I'm trying to think if there was a reason why I chose 17. I think it has to do with the fact that 19 is the age of majority, and they want a 2-year period of sort of introductoriness before you head into an adult thing. And then the age of adulthood I picked because no, this is going to take too long to explain. The age of adulthood is 19 because in the history of this world, there was a particular type of ceremony held by a particular type of people where being more mature actually helped you survive the ceremony. And so, they didn't want 13-year-olds or 15-year-olds going through the ceremony. So they pushed it back to 19, and that affected all kinds of things around them, even though many people didn't know about the ceremony itself.
So women mature faster than men.
Yeah.
That gives them an advantage in the ceremony if everybody goes through it at 19.
Probably. Yeah, it also has to do with the fact that in order to do the ceremony, you have to prepare for it for a number of years.
Wait, we just said women mature. I'm not entirely understanding that.
Well,
we've established that Juliet's people were humans.
The ceremony, in this ceremony, it has more to do with intellectual and spiritual preparation than it does with physical maturity.
Does anyone know whether women are ahead of men in emotional and spiritual development?
Hard to say.
I don't think I've ever seen a study on it.
I don't believe there's a sense that they are in this case.
Mm-hmm.
I think that particular thing is very culturally relative, and also that even when we're talking about maturity, we need to talk about how dimorphic a population is. And also, again, I want to ask Juliet, these are humans.
Yes.
Okay, because
yes, they are humans. Sometimes I'm not writing about humans. In this case, I am.
Right. Secondary world humans don't necessarily have the same developmental patterns that modern Earth humans do. So
true, that's true.
I think that's all entirely up to the world building of, in this case, Juliet. So,
it's a good question.
Do we want to?
You know, that's a great point. It would make a lot of sense for a future human society to slow down development if kids are not going to be adults till they're 19. Right now, we have so many problems with teenagers because they're physically adults, but they're still children legally.
Well, I mean, that gets us into the question of how we extended childhood and why, and oh dear.
There were good reasons for it.
Culturally, yeah. But I think that takes us into a whole other cultural avenue than just the
we have many different ideas of what constitutes adulthood and what constitutes coming of age and what constitutes entry into adult society and what constitutes the proper demarcation of childhood from adulthood and what are children expected to be competent at, what are they protected from, what are they expected to participate in, how precious are children. I mean, there's a whole lot of assumption being dragged in here, and I think that one of the points about writing in genre is that they're all up for grabs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and certainly in the nobility in my book, the children are considered to be these absolute jewels, right? Because the ones that are still alive and healthy are just, you would do anything to keep them around because there are a few of them.
Juliet, may I probe a little bit on your world building around nobility here?
Sure.
First of all, I'm very curious as to why you created a nobility at all, and why they're also like an inbred nobility. I mean, if this is a future world, then theoretically we understand
not a future
genetics.
World. So it's a secondary world that's not related to human timelines.
Okay, so they don't know that inbreeding causes.
They avoid thinking about it.
Well, all right then. It's a good answer.
many people outside the nobility know exactly what's going on, and in fact, many people inside the nobility probably know what's going on, but don't want to admit it because they don't want to give up their nobility. In the name of health. So they try to find other kinds of solutions, like putting more pressure on the people who are supposed to care for them and things like that.
I have a more general question. I think we have enough breadth of respondent here. I'm not sure that we have the human global correlation of coming of age markers, even if they're not at the same ages. Famously, Jewish adulthood is at 13, and it's an interesting dilemma for young Jews living in secular worlds where they don't, realms where we're not adults legally in any sense, aside from within the culture. So do we actually have global norms on what the coming of age categories are?
I don't think so.
Generally, it's puberty.
Yeah.
I assume
and then that's
few developed worlds use that anymore, though.
So
developed societies.
The idea of puberty is relatively recent. The idea of adolescence, right, is relatively recent, like that there's this period between childhood and adulthood, which is why the Jewish tradition is so young, is because it dates back to, like, okay, you've hit puberty and now you're a grown-up, right? That was the two categories, child and adult. It works as a bar and bat mitzvah works as a puberty rite, however. Right? Like there are examples around the world of rites for kids entering around that age. It's worth noting that in traditional Orthodox communities, girls are bat mitzvah at 12 and boys are bar mitzvah at 13 because girls mature faster. In other Jewish traditions that are not Orthodox, it's 13 for both. Girls and boys, but it does make you an adult in a ritual context. You are fully adult, right? And so you count in what is called a minyan, which is you need 10 adult Jews, or if you're Orthodox, male Jews. If you're everyone else, adults of any gender, Jews to count. To do certain kinds of things in a ritual. There are certain prayers that can only be said in groups of 10 or more. If once you hit the age of 13, you count in a minion, and you have all the responsibilities of an adult in the community, which is to say, ritual responsibilities. And you prove it by leading your service, leading a service for the community. So you learn how.
That's what happens at a bar mitzvah, right?
Yeah, or bat mitzvah. You read from Torah. You lead the whole service if you work to do that. And so you basically fulfill the function of the rabbi and the chazan or cantor. And you read from Torah and do all these things. Again, Orthodox with girls, sometimes they don't do everything, but everyone else does. And you are fully adult in the context of the religious community in a very real way.
Yes.
So there's that. You still can't like drive a car or legally drink.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. But that's the world outside. It's a religious ceremony for a religious community, and that's the secular world is its own thing.
I want to note also that puberty and adulthood are not necessarily strongly linked everywhere.
Oh, no.
There are ceremonies for, okay, now you are bodily an adult, and you might not be legally or societally granted all of the rights and duties of adulthood in various societies. I mean, there are societies where they say, well, now that you've reached puberty, now you are training to be an adult, and you don't become an adult until, and there are various other rites of passage for, the ones we are most exotically fascinated by in the office working West are, hunting rights and things like that. But there are all sorts of different markers of what have you actually achieved, and what are the markers of what we consider to be you are now a functioning adult, which is one of the difficulties we're having right now, because we're having difficulty defining adulthood, which is why we're talking about people in their 20s still being not fully adult in the US, which is not a thing that I grew up with. You were definitely an adult at 21 when I was a kid, but now I remember in my 20s that was in flux.
Well, I was growing up in Tennessee, and they raised the drinking age from 18 to 21 while I was 17 to 20, right? So like my friends a few months older than me got grandfathered in as they raised it to 19 and then to 21, and I did not. So that created an interesting situation. But now, you're basically you can drive at 16, you can vote at 18, you can serve in the military at 18, but you can't drink till 21, and you can't rent a car till 25 from pretty much any car rental place. So those are the various secular stages in the United States for adulthood.
And then you can't become president until you're 35.
They're all the same at 18. You can drink, drive, and vote.
Yeah, I'm not sure that you can rent a car at 18, but
yeah, I don't know that you can. Because it wouldn't be that you could rent a car, because you'd have to go through the process of learning to drive and getting your license and all that stuff. And I think that renting a car would be something that would happen after that.
So we have definitely turned being able to drive a car into a rite of passage in the
definitely
the motor vehicle dependent West, and it's also kind of interesting as I'm watching my children enter into their tweens, and oh my goodness, on the brink of their teen years. What children are actually allowed to do independently has been scaled back drastically.
Yeah.
So that rites of passage that used to happen, like you were allowed to walk home from school by yourself, or you might be allowed to stay at home alone, have been legally shifted very hard in some municipalities. And it's very, very patchwork. There are places in the world where you're expected to be able to get yourself across town on public transit as a child, and there are places where if your parents do that, they act like your parents are really horrible. So,
yeah.
And in a world building sense, this is all about what does the culture think of itself?
Yep.
And what is it afraid of?
In my current work in progress, it's a middle grade novel, and the main character is 12, and she takes public transit across town to get to her school. And then one of the boys on her team, he has a bicycle that he takes all over town. So I decided to include that in the book. You know, I decided that. I decided, I'm like, no, I'm going to let them have this autonomy at 12.
Well, I always thought that Kiki's delivery service was interesting.
Yeah, you go away for a year.
When you're 13 and you like, run a business by yourself?
Yeah, or like, I think it's, I don't know, did she have to start a business, or was it just that you had to go out and like hone your powers and kind of find something to do, and then you could kind of come home or not?
Well, I don't know that you'd have to start a business, but you'd have to find some way to stay alive for a year by yourself, right?
Yeah.
So you'd have to find some way of doing something that people would remunerate you for, or at least feed you for.
Yeah. And there was the snobby girl who was the fortune teller in like the kind of like posh resort town that she met on the way to where she settled.
Yeah, it's just how, you know, I think one of the issues in that movie is like, you know, how enter which senses of what powers are more useful.
But yeah,
how
like,
do
well,
witches diss like, each other? But I mean, honestly, isn't that what world building is about, right?
Yes.
How do witches diss each other?
Oh, all you do is fly.
Okay, then. That's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
A whole nother episode.
We are at the end of our hour, but it's been interesting, and I think there's more here, a lot more. So yeah. I thought maybe we should do a session on birds.
Yes.
Which would be fun, and Che could be a star. I think we didn't do a lot on coming of age, and I think we could dig into it a lot more. So I'm going to make a note that we should come back to it.
There's a lot of varying sort of ceremonies and trials.
Yeah.
You know, does it involve pain? Does it involve hunting? Does it involve none of those things? Is it just the community decides? Is it, you know,
yep.
All sorts of things.
Yep. Anyway, thank you all for being here. I think next week I have no concept, but let's try doing birds next week just for fun. Okay. And we'll come back to coming of age another time, because I don't typically like to do the same topic 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
Have we done how a culture does festivals and festive gatherings and commemorations?
Nope. Well, we did festivals, but a long time ago, so we should totally do it again.
I know we did festivals at least once.
Yeah, we did. But you know what?
There's a lot of meat there.
There's a lot there. Most of the topics that we do, you know, you could probably spend years studying if you really wanted to get serious. So I don't find that there's any problem in revisiting topic as long as we feel we can explore new things. So,
cool.
Anyway, thank you all for being here. I'm going to stop the broadcast.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.